I don't know how to write. I don't know how to put it. So, Tyson has finished ZAP after this full year. It has been accomplished. And I know many people have questions, so we've compiled some that people have asked me over the last few weeks about his conclusion on ZAP. What do you think ZAP was going to be like versus what it was actually like? How did it differ from your imagination?
Well, it was certainly much different than I had imagined it to be. I really kind of thought it was going to be a great adventure that was constantly exciting and new and fresh and just amazing on a daily basis. And it ended up being more of kind of, in a lot of ways, like kind of actually a drag. It's like oddly one of the best ways to put it. I'd had moments of absolute clarity and like brilliance and like definitely had like amazing triumphs. That was pretty cool, but I definitely over-romanticized things, as I've talked about, and idealized things. I did not think of the day-to-day struggle it takes to survive and just like subsist off the land and the tedium that entails. Can't explain how many hours I spent cracking chestnuts or walnuts or acorns or making fires, cooking.
One of the many questions that I've been asked is, do you feel accomplished?
I feel like I should feel more accomplished than I do, I guess. The longer it went on, the more it seemed like I really wasn't even doing anything strange. I got so used to it, it didn't seem like as big of a deal as it did when I started, I guess. And so I feel like I should have this like great sense of satisfaction and an accomplishment. And I feel like, oddly, that like maybe I should have tackled more, even though there was plenty of times where it seemed like I was already overwhelmed and whatnot. I guess doing it for a whole year, when you finish it, you're in a much different place than when you started, and I would say that I feel less accomplished than I feel like I should.
If you can go back and start from the beginning, would there be anything that you would do differently? Or in general, would you do it again, the whole thing?
Faced with what I know now, I would do it again because I learned so much, and that's really what I set out to do. For me, it was like in the back of my mind for a couple of years, and it was bothering me, and I really couldn't move on with the rest of my life without going through this experience. I would probably make it easier for people to trade with me. The interaction with people and the bartering thing was a really cool experience, like living without money, but I was really restricted in the avenues that I could pursue with that. And a lot of people would try and trade with me but couldn't, and you know, like maybe they had like cooked something that they had caught themselves, and thus like if it was cooked on a propane stove, I couldn't have it. More than that, it's just like a really interesting experience, just like living through goods instead of through like, you know, like money. Like everything you deal with has intrinsic value, which is funny that we have all this like stake and like faith in this like money that doesn't even exist now. You know, it's all online and stuff. It's not even in paper anymore. So that's weird.
Do you remember your hardest day or a specific time where you thought was the hardest, and like a memory that you thought the most you wanted to quit?
Yeah, there was like 3 different times where I was like thinking about quitting. Not thinking about it, but like fantasizing about it, I guess. I think the first time was like during the holidays last year, and I'm a very sentimental person, and so during the holidays I just felt really unfulfilled because I couldn't be like participating in like all this like wonderfulness and the magic of like the holiday season, and all the food around the holidays was really difficult for me, and it was just super dark and rainy, and so I got pretty depressed. I hadn't gone so far that there was like no turning back. I was like just beginning. I was like finished like a quarter of ZAP, so it was still at the point where I was like, well, I could quit now, and I haven't gone like 3/4 of a year where I have to. And then that spring, obviously, I had my citrus hemorrhoids issue, and that was freaking gnarly, dude. Like that was like a month of like struggling to survive and spending a lot of time laying on my stomach in bed reading books, and that was miserable. And if it continued like that, I'm sure I would have just said, I'm over this. And the third time was when I had my tooth weird infection thing. To me, that was probably the closest that I came, not to quitting, but to just being forced out. The first day that I woke up with that like throbbing in my jaw, and I looked in the mirror and I saw that, I was pretty sure it was over. I still had like a month and a half left, 2 months. There's no point in like getting an infection in your jaw and having to like amputate your jaw or something. I don't know. My mom was feeding me horror stories.
What are the things that you missed most being on ZAP? Like an occasion or a certain kind of food, or what do you feel like you missed out on or missed the most?
I'd say the thing I missed out on the most was going to Derek's multi-million-dollar mansion in Mexico with everyone, which free stay and a mansion in Cabo is pretty hard to turn down.
To be clear, I missed out on that too because of ZAP.
So that really sucked. They all had a really good time, and so that was kind of sad for me, just to not be included in that because of what I was doing.
Going along with the missing aspect, what do you think you'll miss most about being on ZAP?
I feel like certainly the thing that I'll miss most is living without money. Just it's so cool to like not be worried about your bills or like fixing your car or like having to go to the grocery store and drop a bunch of money or like owing people money or people owing you money. Just like the money thing just sucks, dude. It's just like it's something that's in the back of like most people's minds all the time, I think, and like a lot of like reasons for like not getting along with people and whatnot. And living without it is a very empowering experience and a very unique experience that I really enjoyed. And it just really simplifies things, you know. Just once you're like, your worry is food, it's just like, it's harder in some ways, but it's just a lot easier. It's a lot less complex. You're just like, get it, put it in your mouth, just done.
But in a way, on ZAP, food was money.
Well, food was my currency. No, that's true. I wouldn't. Yeah, people would come over and be like, "Oh, dried pears," and you'd start eating them, and I'd be like, "Whoa, what the hell are you doing there?"
Yeah, it's like someone coming over and stealing your $20 off your account.
Yeah. That was funny. People would be like, "Oh, you're living off the land," and then they start eating stuff, and then they're like, "So, how long does this last?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's lasting till like next year," and they're like, "Oh, I thought you were doing that for like a week." So
yeah, maybe we should eat your stuff.
Yeah.
I know we kind of touched on your worst, the days that you wanted to quit, but I wanted to ask you what were your favorite memories and your least favorite memories. More not like when you wanted to quit, but like just in general.
Well, like one of my favorite memories was like my first buckskin that we tanned, because that was just like a magical process that seems like it shouldn't exist, and it seems like no one should have ever figured it out, and yet it works, and it's like just crazy to watch it happen. Like a really like satisfying, fulfilling experience. It was really cool to go backpacking with no food and be heckled by my friends for days and like be forced to just like totally subsist off the land and like see exactly how difficult that is. And that again was like one of the most fulfilling experiences of the experience and one of the most gnarly at the same time, but that was like a really, really cool thing to do. The third experience would have to be a kayak trip, which is probably going to go down under worst and best experiences because
Poor Cyrus.
God, that trip, dude. Poor Cyrus. I always come up with these crazy ideas and like drag him along, and he has to like suffer with me. There was like moments during that trip that were just like spectacular, you know, just like kayaking down the coast with the stars out, and, like dawn coming on, all lavender, or, like, you know, pulling into a bay that you can't even get to, and like being on some amazing beach that's like totally inaccessible. We had a lot of laughs on that trip, for sure. Worst memories to me of ZAP are probably anytime I had a project I was working on and it just like blew up in my face or like came to ruin and maybe wasted food, like, you know, several smoking disasters that went bad, and you know, I'd just be all upset. I'd try and go and tackle something, like I tried to make the soap and like, God, that was so much work to make soap, and something didn't go right. And so it's really frustrating to like put your heart and soul into something and like be really excited about it and like excited to learn about it, and then in the end you've only learned how not to do it, which is you know, it's still learning, but it's kind of drag.
So the $1 million question is, if the apocalypse came, that you think you would be prepared?
I feel like the apocalypse is like one of those things that you can't be prepared for. No matter how much preparation you do, no one's ever prepared for it. And if you think you are, then you're probably even less prepared than maybe you should be. Obviously, I'm like much better prepared than I was a year ago, like drastically more prepared. But I still feel like I would have some serious trouble in the apocalypse. It does not sound like fun to me. There's no like romantic part of it in my mind. It's just gonna be like, you know, miserable, nasty, brutish, short, chaotic suffering. The best thing to do to prepare for it is to prevent it, which in my mind means everyone using less resources. Only use what you need, don't be gluttonous. I mean, I kind of like hate it when people say that, like, oh, save the energy, save the whales, whatever. It's just like, I don't know, everyone gets in that like, oh, I'm going green, and like, ugh, it just makes me want to vomit. And yet, like, it really is, that's what it boils down to, is like, don't be wasteful.
So what do you think the most valuable apocalyptic knowledge that you gained this year?
Probably like my experiences in preserving food. There's all kinds of stuff I learned that's like really cool knowledge, but it's not like probably absolutely vital to immediate survival. But knowing like, you know, like how long you can have food unrefrigerated before you can eat it and get sick, or like different ways of preserving food, and like, you know, what you can eat, what you can't eat, what you can forage, how to dry stuff, how to smoke stuff, how to salt things, all that. That's really the name of the game, is like not only getting the food, but keeping the food. Because there's so much emphasis, I think, on like going out there and getting the stuff, but you don't realize that like having food stored by is like really the best way to like even out your ups and downs in like a post-apocalyptic situation.
So of the strategies of survival that you went through, what do you think was the most successful?
I feel like the garden was probably number one. Just because I didn't have to store the food, it was just there and I could just like always eat it. And it provided something that was just constant, you know, like I could always go out in the garden and get food and cook it up and eat it. That said, you get like really sick of eating like vegetable soup or whatever. So after gardening, I feel like foraging was a really good way to get a lot of food, particularly in like the nuts, chestnuts, acorns, walnuts. That was really like my trifecta of like kind of like weird grainy staples. And buckeyes too, even though buckeyes are freaking nasty. That was a lot of stuff that you could gather up like when it was bountiful and then just store it by pretty easy. And you know, I had like little hiccups with that, but for the most part it was a good way to store food. You know, I could go hunting or fishing or whatnot, but it's a lot more difficult to preserve the meat. There's like more energy put out for the energy coming in, especially with spearfishing, but also with fishing. I like, you know, hunting around the house where you're doing something else and like something flies by and you shoot it and eat it. So that's good too. Just like hand to mouth.
What do you think the most successful food preservation was?
Just like totally drying stuff out seemed like the best. It doesn't take any energy, it's really easy to do. It just takes the weather. Unfortunately, like coastal California is like just not the best place to be doing that. But if you're in any kind of dry climate, like inland California or in the desert or whatever, you get hot days and it's like boom, dry. And then the stuff that I dried, once it was dry, it was like, I mean, I was eating pears like a year later and they were totally fine. So that was really cool. Salting works really good, but then you gotta boil out all the salt, and it uses a lot of salt, which is kind of hard to get. Smoking seems alright. It makes your food taste like smoke.
So I know you thought kind of when you started that you were going to try a bunch of new stuff and you were going to like find like the thing to eat.
Yeah.
This new thing that was going to be good. So I know you said that didn't really happen, but what do you think was your favorite new thing that you tried that you thought worked the best and tasted the best?
Dealing with the acorns was a really frustrating experience because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have someone to teach me, and it is kind of a difficult process. But that was like seemed like the best in terms of like just getting food, and like being able to store it and having it be like pretty tasty, and you can like fix it up different ways. The yuccas were like constantly amazing. Like, I mean, I started out going from like eating yucca flowers to then like eating the yucca shoots, which is like this amazing like sugary jicama, and then I was eating the seed pods, and that was a trip, and all of it was really good and like really plentiful. The cattail shoots were really good, so that was like another surprise. So also the sea lettuce was like just like mind-blowing. It was like that stuff makes stuff taste so good, and I don't even know why. It's just like this green slimy stuff, and it's just like, man, dude, you put that in some soup and it's super good. Easy to collect, tons of it, and easy to dry it and just turns into powder. So that was cool. The sea salt was cool too, just getting our own sea salt. I need to do that again. I traded most of it off.
What about the worst thing you had? Maybe that you thought was going to work, or just something that you were like, oh, I'll try this, and then it ended up being
For
just
food.
like, nasty.
I'm thinking at the top of the list is Buckeyes, which I didn't think that was going to be good because, like, sources said basically this is like what the Indians ate when they were starving. But I was like, yeah, it can't be that bad. I mean, it's edible, whatever. And it's a lot of work for something that is just it tastes tainted. It tastes like soapy, just ugh. Like, I would put a little bit of that in my mush and it would just contaminate the whole thing, dude. Just this weird fucking poison flavor. The fox was surprisingly horrible too.
Yeah, it's a carnivore.
The carnivorous thing, it was like this sweaty, rusty,
Ugh.
just like, and like, God, I was eating that for like 4 days, and just like on the last day, I actually didn't finish the last day. I ate like half of it, and I was like, nasty.
Anything else you'd like to add?
We had this big joke about like who I was gonna like hand the like deer bone to and like pass the torch, and then one of the other troops was gonna go do ZAP for a year. And I'm still like holding it out there.
No one's coming.
No one wants to grab the
coming.
no one wants to grab the deer bone torch. I don't get it. It's fun, right?